They gave you the drum when you were 14. Not because you asked, because your hands were steady and your arms were long, and the sergeant who tested you pressed 2 sticks into your palms and watched your wrists for 3 minutes and said nothing and walked away. And that was how it was decided. You were from Châlons-sur-Marne. Your father made shoes. You had never seen a cannon. That was 2 years ago. You are 16 now, and the 57e Régiment d'Infanterie de Ligne is 800 meters from the Flèches, and the ground ahead of you is already the color of something that should not be that color. The drum is a 1809 pattern caisse claire, beechwood shell, calfskin heads front and back, iron tension rods worn smooth where your thumbs rest during the march. You have carried it from Smolensk. Before that, from Vitebsk. Before that, from the crossing of the Niemen at Kovno, where the emperor sat on his horse above the river, and you were close enough to see that his coat was damp, and his face was not what you expected the face of an emperor to look like. It looked tired. You filed that observation away and did not speak of it. The drum hangs from your left shoulder on a leather sling that has been repaired 4 times. The original brass buckle is gone, replaced by a piece of wire twisted around itself, and the wire is held for 6 weeks. You check it every morning. You checked it this morning. Before the sun was up, in the dark, standing in the field outside Borodino where the regiment bivouacked, you ran your thumb along the wire and pressed it, and it held. That was the first thing you did on the last morning before Borodino. The second thing you did was count. You do this every morning. You have done it since Vitebsk, since the regiment began to shrink in ways that were not accounted for by battle. Men who walked into the forest to find water and did not come back. Men who lay down at night and could not rise in the morning. The 57E crossed the Niemen with 648 effectives. You counted 648. You are precise about numbers. Your father kept his accounts in a ledger with red margins, and he taught you that imprecision in numbers is a form of dishonesty. This morning you counted 411. You held the number for a moment, the way you hold a drumstick before the downbeat, and then you let it go. 411 men. The regiment will advance in 3 columns. Colonel Charlet will ride ahead of the 2nd column. You will walk behind the 1st, on the left flank, where the officers can see you and the men can hear you. 411. The number does not mean what it would mean to someone who has never stood inside a French regiment of the line on the morning of a battle. It means the regiment can still advance. It means the regiment can still hold its formation. It means there are enough men to do what is about to be asked of them. Whether there will be 411 at nightfall is a different question, and you do not ask it. There is a small thing in the left breast pocket of your habit vest. Not a letter. It is a button. Brass, military pattern, with an eagle stamped on the face, but not a French eagle. It is a Prussian button from a coat that is not described in any inventory of your possessions, because it is not yours. It belonged to a corporal of the 1st Prussian Infantry who was killed at Jena in 1806. You found it in the mud 6 years ago when you were 10 years old, and the army passed through Châlons, and you followed it for half a day, before your mother came and brought you back. You have kept it since then. You do not know why. When you check the wire on your drum sling each morning, you check the button second. This morning it was there. This morning it was cold, and then it was warm, because you held it for a moment before you put it back. You put it back. The Flèches. The word means arrows, which is the shape they are. 3 earthwork redoubts arranged in a V pointing west, toward the French lines, toward you. They were built by Russian engineers in the week before the battle. The earthworks are low, 4 feet, maybe 5, with ditches in front of them. From 800 meters, they look like nothing. They look like a fold in the ground. You know better than to trust what a thing looks like from 800 meters. Marshal Davout wanted to outflank them. You know this because soldiers talk, and drummers are furniture to the officers who talk in front of them, and you have been furniture for 2 years. Marshal Davout wanted to take the 57E and 4 other regiments south of the Flèches, get behind Bagration's line, cut the Russian left entirely. The emperor said no. The emperor wanted a frontal attack. The frontal attack would be more expensive but more decisive. You held the word decisive in your mind the way you hold a drumstick before the downbeat. Decisive. The order comes at 6:30 in the morning. Not in words, in sound. Marshal Ney's artillery opens first, 12-pounders on the ridge above you, and the sound is not like thunder. It is not like anything you had language for before you joined the army. It is a pressure. It begins in your chest and moves outward. The first time you heard it, at the crossing into Russia, you thought for a moment that you had been struck, that something had hit you, and then you understood that nothing had hit you, that the sound itself was the thing, that a 12-pounder fired at range moves through a body the way water moves into cloth. You know it now. You stand and let it move through you, and you do not flinch. The regiment forms. Colonel Charlet rides to the front of the 2nd column. Captain Lebrun takes the 1st. You take your position on the left flank of the 1st column, Drum at your hip, sticks in your hands, and you look at the Flèches 800 meters away and you think about the rhythm. The advance is pas accéléré, 120 steps per minute. You know this rhythm the way you know your own heartbeat. You have beaten it on parade grounds in Châlons, on roads outside Erfurt, on the field before Smolensk. Your wrists carry it independently of your mind. But today, for the first time, you are aware of your wrists as separate from yourself, as instruments you are operating rather than extensions of your body, and you think this is probably what fear feels like when it has nowhere else to go. The order comes. En avant. You begin. The drum speaks. Rataplan, rataplan. The double stroke on the downbeat. The roll building under it. And 411 men begin to move, and for the first 60 seconds, there is only the drum and the feet and the artillery above you, and the distant shape of the Flèche growing larger. Then the Russian guns open. The first battery you cannot see. They are behind the earthworks, 12-pounders firing oblique at the advancing columns, and the first shot lands 30 yards to your right and throws a column of earth 6 feet high, and when it comes down, there are 2 men down, and the column closes, and you do not stop. You do not stop. This is the rule. This is the only rule that matters this morning. A drummer does not stop. A drummer cannot stop, because if the drum stops, the men lose the rhythm, and if the men lose the rhythm, the column hesitates, and if the column hesitates inside range of a Russian battery, the column dies. The drum is not music. The drum is the mechanism by which 411 men remain. 411 men instead of 411 individuals, each of whom is afraid and would, if given a moment to be an individual, stop. You give them no moment. Rataplan. The smoke comes at the 200-meter mark. The first Russian volley from the Flèches themselves, infantry behind the earthworks, muskets at 150 yards, and the smoke rolls forward and down, and in 10 seconds, you cannot see more than 20 yards in any direction. You know the Flèches are ahead of you because they were ahead of you when the smoke came. You beat the advance rhythm and you walk into the smoke and you trust the rhythm. The men beside you cough. The man to your left goes down and you do not look. You beat the rhythm. At 50 yards, you can see the earthwork wall and the shakos above it, and the muzzles of the muskets. And then the second volley comes, and the man behind you says something in a language you do not recognize, which means he is probably dying. And then you are at the ditch, and the column breaks into the assault, and you beat the charge. The pas de charge. 6 beats and hold, 6 beats and hold, and the men go over the wall. You go over the wall. This is the first time. The Flèches fall to the 57E at 7:45 in the morning. You are inside the earthwork, which is smaller than it looked from a distance, and smells of sulfur and blood, and the particular smell of Russian powder, which is different from French powder, darker and oilier, a smell you will never afterwards encounter without returning to this moment. General Compans is down, wounded. You see him carried back. You see Davout's horse shot from under him at the edge of the Flèche, and Davout rising from the ground and looking at the horse the way a man looks at something he cannot afford to lose. The 57E holds the position for 11 minutes. Then the Russian counterattack comes. It comes from the northeast, from behind the Semenovka village, and it is Bagration's grenadiers. The Tula infantry regiment, 4 battalions, in column, and they are not running, they are walking, which is worse, which means they have been told to walk and they are doing it, which means they have the kind of discipline that does not require speed to be terrifying. The 57E has 411 men. The Tula regiment has 2,000. The order comes to withdraw. You beat the retreat. 2 quick strokes, long roll, 2 quick strokes, and the men come back over the wall and the regiment falls back in good order, which means in the smoke and the noise and the Russian guns opening again, the men move together rather than separately, which is not inevitable, which is the result of 2 years of drill and the sound of a drum they have learned to trust. You beat them back. This is what you are. The second assault begins at 9:15. You count the interval between the first and second assault the way you counted the men this morning, not because you can do anything with the number, but because precision is a form of control, and control is the only thing you have. 90 minutes. The men have eaten nothing since last night. The water in the canteens is not water anymore. It is the colour of the Koloka River, which is the colour of mud. Your wrists ache. The drum has taken 2 musket balls in the shell. You felt them hit. Distinct impacts, and you looked down both times and saw that the heads were intact and you kept going. The shell has 2 holes in it now. The sound is different. There is a flutter in the tone on the right side where the wood is cracked, a secondary resonance that is not part of the rhythm. You hear it under every stroke. It is the sound of the drum being damaged and still functioning. You think about this while you wait for the second assault order. The drum is damaged and still functioning. En avant. Second assault. The Flèches have been reinforced. The Russians brought up 2 additional batteries during the interval, and the approach across the open ground is through heavier fire than the first assault. The man immediately to your right is killed before you reach the 100-meter mark. He goes down in a single motion, no warning, like a man sitting down, and the man behind him stumbles on him and recovers and keeps walking, and you keep the rhythm. At 70 meters, a canister round comes apart 30 yards ahead of you and takes down 9 men in the first column, and for a moment there is a gap in the formation that is not supposed to be there, and you beat 6 bars of the charge rhythm, faster, harder, and the men behind the gap step around it and close, and the column continues. You are the youngest person in this column. You are aware of this in the way you are aware of the wire on your drum sling, as a fact that is either important or not important, and you have not decided which. The Flèches fall again at 10:30. The 57E takes them with the 61 Ligne on the right flank, and this time the assault goes over the wall with bayonets, which means you are close enough to see faces, which is different from musket range, which is different from everything the army taught you about how battle is supposed to feel. It is supposed to be noise and smoke and distance. At bayonet range, it is none of those things. It is something else entirely, something that does not have a name in the vocabulary they gave you in Châlons-sur-Marne when you were 10 years old and following an army down a road. The 57E holds the Flèches for 23 minutes. Then Bagration's reserves arrive. You retreat again. This is the 3rd time you have beaten retreat today, and you have stopped being surprised by it. The retreat rhythm sounds different to you now than it did this morning, not because it is different, you have played it correctly each time, but because you are hearing it from inside it rather than from outside it, and from inside it sounds like what it is, which is a group of men being pulled back from a place they almost died to take, by a sound a 16-year-old boy is making with 2 sticks against a piece of wood. You think about the Prussian button in your pocket. You do not reach for it. Your hands are occupied. But you think about it. There is an interval between the 3rd and 4th assaults that is different from the other intervals. It is longer, 40 minutes by your count. During this interval, something happens that you will not fully understand until years later, when you are old enough to read the accounts and piece together what the smoke prevented you from seeing. Marshal Murat is arguing with the Emperor. Murat wants to commit the Imperial Guard, the Old Guard, 12,000 men in reserve behind the central line, to break the Russian position permanently. The Emperor says no. The Emperor says it is too far from home. You do not know this while it is happening. You are sitting on the ground behind the regiment, checking the wire on your drum sling, and one of the other drummers, a boy from Lyon named Renaud, 14 years old, who has been vomiting since the 2nd assault, is sitting beside you, and you tear him a piece of your biscuit, which is hard enough to be a weapon, and he takes it and does not eat it, but holds it. And you watch him hold it, and you say nothing, because there is nothing to say. The biscuit is from Smolensk. It is 6 weeks old. You do not think about this. 4th assault, 10th hour of the morning. The Flèches are on fire now. Some portion of the earthworks interior has caught, from the Russian artillery or from the detritus of 7 hours of fighting, and as the 57E advances for the 4th time, you can see the smoke from the burning interior rising above the earthwork wall, a darker smoke than powder smoke, oilier, the smoke of wood and leather, and the things that collect inside a fortification when men have been fighting over it all morning. Your wrists have passed through pain and come out the other side into something that is not quite numbness and not quite sensation, a sustained vibration that lives in the tendons rather than the muscles, and you understand that tomorrow you will not be able to close your hands, and you file this information away because it is not relevant to what is happening now. What is happening now is the 4th assault. You beat it. The Flèches fall a 4th time at noon. The 57E does not advance alone this time. Friant's division is on the left, the 15 Légère is on the right, and the assault goes in on a front broad enough that the Russian batteries cannot concentrate effectively, and the earthworks fall in under 40 minutes, and for the first time this morning, the French hold them for longer than half an hour. You stand inside the Flèche and watch the Russian counterattack form up to the northeast, and you count the battalions, and you count 14, and you look at what is left of the 57E, perhaps 240 men on their feet. You will count them when there is time, and you understand that the counterattack is going to be different this time, that 14 battalions of Russian infantry is not the same thing as 4, and that the number you are going to beat next depends on an officer's decision that has not yet been made. You wait. You hold your sticks. The decision comes from Colonel Charlet, who rides along the line and says to no one in particular, and to everyone, the regiment will hold. You will hold. The regiment holds. This is the 5th time the Flèches change hands. It takes 3 hours. It costs the 57E another 60 men on the earthwork wall alone, and at the end of it, the French hold the Flèches and Bagration is dying. A shell fragment through his leg, carried from the field at 2 in the afternoon, and the Russian line has bent but has not broken, and the sun is beginning to lower over the Kolokha River. 6th Assault. 7th Assault. You beat them both. You will not remember them individually. Not for years. Not until you try to write them down and discover that the mind stores the 7th Assault and the 6th Assault in the same place, that between the 5th and the 8th, the individual actions blur into a single sustained experience that is not a battle, but something more like weather, something that happens to you rather than something you do, and that what survives of those hours is not sequence, but texture. The sound of the drum under your own hands, the smell of the burning flesh, the specific weight of the sticks when your wrists have been playing for 8 hours, the way the light changed over the Russian lines as the afternoon came on. You beat the charge 7 times. You beat the retreat 4 times. You are 16 years old. At 4 in the afternoon, the guns stop. Not all at once. First, the Russian batteries east of the Flèches go quiet, and then the French batteries on the ridge, and then the musket fire drops from a sustained exchange to isolated shots, to nothing. And the silence that comes after is not the silence you knew before the battle. It is a different substance, heavier, pressed down by 8 hours of artillery into something almost material, something you could put your hand through and feel the resistance of. You lower your sticks. You stand in the silence. Renaud is beside you. He is alive. His coat is grey with powder smoke, and there is a cut above his right ear that he has not noticed, a thin line of dried blood running to his jaw, and he is looking at the Flèches as if he is trying to understand what they are now that the fighting is over. They are not what they were this morning. The earthwork walls are lower, collapsed in sections from artillery impact, from the weight of men going over them. The ditches in front are partially filled. The interior is burned. You look at them too, 7 times. You count what is left of the 57E before dark. You do it the way you do everything, precisely, moving through the groups of men resting behind the captured position, counting by 5s and recording the 5s on your wrist in charcoal. 207 effectives, down from 411. 411 this morning, 207 tonight. You write the number on your wrist and you look at it for a long time and then you close your hand over it. The night comes down over Borodino slowly, the way night comes down after days like this one, as if the light is reluctant to leave, as if even the sun requires time to process what it has seen. The fires on the field burn through the dark. Russian fires, French fires, the remains of the Semenovka village. Something burning on the road east that you cannot identify from here. You sit with your drum between your knees. You reach into the left breast pocket of your habit vest. The Prussian button is there. It is cold again now, the way it was this morning before you held it. And you hold it again, and it warms. And you sit with it in your palm and look at the fires on the field and try to understand what happened here. What it means that the Flèches changed hands 7 times and that you beat the rhythm for all 7. That you are 16 and alive and that 204 men who were alive this morning are not. You cannot understand it. You close your hand around the button. You close your eyes. Somewhere east of you, in a farmhouse that has been commandeered as a headquarters, the Emperor is being told the results. 40,000 French casualties. 44,000 Russian. The field is technically a French victory because the French hold the ground. The Russian army is intact. Kutuzov has withdrawn east toward Moscow and he is not broken. You do not know this. You know the button is cold and then warm. You know the wire on your drum sling held all day. You know 207. You know the rhythm. That is what you know. In the morning, you will count again. You will press the button once, replace it, check the wire and begin. That is what a tambour does. That is all a tambour does.